各位朋友，大家下午好！欢迎各位参加由 Mentorico 导师学院和组织隐形技能管理全球智库联合主办的组织隐形技能管理大师系列讲座50场之第18场。那今天讲座的主题是隐性知识在适应中演变。然后今天的演讲嘉宾是来自澳大利亚的 Shelley 博士。首先我们来认识一下今天的演讲嘉宾 Arthur 博士。那 Arthur 博士他是几百例的前首席知识官，然后他也自己创办了 Intelligent Answers 这家公司，也是这家公司的首席执行官。他同时也是很多协会组织的会长，是澳大利亚知识协会的会长，也是澳大利亚知识管理学会的创始成员。他还是 ISO 30401知识管理标准委员会的澳大利亚代表。他同时也是亚洲最具创新力知识型组织大奖的评委，也是新加坡一个 Knowledge Ready 组织奖的评委导师。他同时也在皇家墨尔本理工大学担任客座教授，然后在其中设计推动了 EMBA 和项目管理硕士的知识管理课程。他在2012年入选了全球50大知识管理最具影响力的名人，在2014年被评为全球知识管理思想领袖。他同时也定期在世界各地的知识管理大会上发表演讲。另外，他还就知识行为能力等话题写了4本书。大家可以看到这个图片的屏幕的右下方有他写的4本书，大家感兴趣的话可以去查找翻阅。今天讲座的主办方是 Mentorico 导师学院和组织隐形技能管理全球智库。Mentorico 是一家总部位于比利时布鲁塞尔的全球化导师服务咨询公司，业务遍及6大洲35个国家和地区。我们提供的导师技术课程、服务流程标准以及服务团队都获得了欧洲导师与教练协会的专业认证。Mentorico 中国是注册在上海的中欧合资企业。我们是在2019年11月首次把欧洲导师技术正式引入中国。组织隐性技能管理全球智库是注册在比利时布鲁塞尔的非营利性国际智库。智库的成立是旨在推动组织隐形技能管理在全社会的运用，推动人类的高效率学习。现在我们就把时间交给今天的演讲嘉宾。Okay, now let's warmly welcome Dr. Arthur to give us the wonderful speech.
Just let me share my screen and I'll take you through some things. And of course, tacit knowledge is such a big, of course, tacit knowledge is such a big issue. Well, when I say the word issue, it's an opportunity, right? It's a positive challenge for us to address. There are so many things that we could share. We all have a lifetime of tacit knowledge that we share, or that we can share to create benefits for others. But of course, our tacit knowledge is different to their tacit knowledge, and I'll talk about that. So I wanted to talk about how tacit knowledge enables us to become adaptable, to address the future, because the future is not here yet, and it will be different to the present. And if we share the learnings of the past, we can then reuse those, not just reapply them the way they were at the time, but to adapt them to a new context and a new future, and with different people in different situations. And I think that's where the term tacit knowledge transfer can be a bit misleading, because you don't transfer your tacit knowledge to someone. You transfer your tacit, you highlight your tacit knowledge and insights within your history and within your contexts. And then the person or the people that you are sharing that with then get to use that as insights in different ways so that they can make better decisions for their future. So it's not just a handing over something, like selling a car. You sell a car and then they drive it. You know, the way they drive it is different. Where they drive it to, how they experience that car is different to you. And tacit knowledge is the same. It adapts. That's the wonderful thing about it. So let's explore that. A little bit about me. I have recently semi-retired. I live down here. You see the little red dot. I live down here in the background. You can see Australia in the southeastern corner of Australia in Melbourne. But I have adapted many times over my career. So I've worked for 40 years, from when I was 20 to when I'm 60. I started my professional career as a scientist. I did 2 science degrees in biological sciences, but I'm a lifetime learner, or as I say, a lifestyle learner. We learn within our lifestyle. Where is our life taking us? So how does learning fit into your lifestyle, and how does it enhance your lifestyle? So I'm a lifestyle learner, a researcher. I did a PhD much later, when I was almost 50. But during that time, I was using my scientific knowledge to develop new understanding, new tacit knowledge. And I was learning all the time of new things. I ran projects in 12 different countries. I've written 4 books over this period of time, mainly in the knowledge management and leadership areas. So you can see them there in the corner of the screen. So I've managed projects in 12 different countries, sometimes Asia. I was part of the team that set up Cadbury in China, in Beijing. So I was working in Beijing for almost 2 years. So, 谢谢, ni hao. It's good to be reconnecting with Beijing after all these years. That was back in 1994. So a lot of things have changed here and there. The world is changing, which is why we need tacit knowledge adaptation.
Yes.
And I'll talk more about that. I've mentored PhD students in 3 different countries. I've founded my own business over 20 years ago, but at the same time have worked in partnership with different universities in different parts of the world, and also with commercial companies and government departments doing stuff. Done a lot of executive education for Chinese, for Vietnamese, for Indians, for delegations that come to Australia to learn mainly soft skills. So to increase their tacit knowledge of how to interact with the world. So, and I was also the creator of a thing called Creative Melbourne. So an international event where we brought people from all around the world in to learn how to be creative and how to open their minds. I've always said that education is not about filling your mind with what is known. It's about opening your mind to what needs to happen next. And my education, my mentoring happens in that way. So that's kind of where I'm coming from. So you've got an understanding of that. Before I go to what we're going to cover in this session, is there anything you want to ask, Visha?
Yeah, actually, Dr. Shelley, Dr. Shelley, I realize that you have a very rich experience in terms of this, knowledge management and even the TK and tacit knowledge management in the very early stage. So one question I'm very curious to know, what drives you to get in touch with this subject so early at that stage? So what triggers you to think about choose this topic?
Yeah, that's a great question. Thanks, Fisher. I've always been very curious. I've always just naturally wanted to make things better, wanting to make a difference. And of course, the way to make things better is to understand more. That is, have a greater level of experience and a broader level of knowledge across the things that go on in the world. And of course, you can't just understand things, you have to understand people. Because in the end, if you want to affect change in the world, you need to influence people to act on those ideas, not just share the ideas. And they go, oh, that's interesting. And they park it, in the back of their mind. A lot of the early speak about knowledge management was about capturing knowledge. And of course, that's an important part, but it's only the beginning. Why would you want to capture knowledge and lock it up like a prisoner? Knowledge creates value when it's released and amplified and applied in the world. Just knowing is not enough. You need to apply it so that it creates value. So a lot of my early career, I was attracted to roles, things like I was an auditor for the ISO quality management standard. And I was a quality manager for a very large company. And I was implementing improvement, the idea of the quality standard, and now the knowledge management standard, which I was a member of the committee of. the international standard for knowledge management is about making better decisions and applying knowledge so that you improve decision making and performance. So it's all about continuous improvement. And so I came through the continuous improvement. I wrote strategies around continuous improvement back in the 80s and 90s. And then, that led to knowledge management, which was kind of just starting around that time.
Right. Thank you. Thank you. Dr. Shelley, for your wonderful sharing, for your previous experience about how you choose this knowledge management as one of your interest, research areas. Very good. Thank you. Okay, let's continue.
Yep, my pleasure.
Yeah.
So what I wanted to share today, and of course there are many things that we could share around Tacit, but I just wanted to really try and address three questions from my perspective. Of course, your audience, your listeners, will answer these questions in a different way. And the best thing to do there would be to talk about those differences. So why do you answer it that way? And just because I say this is my perception of this, it doesn't mean it's the only way. Chinese do things differently to Vietnamese, which do differently to Australians. We have different ways of doing things, but when we share the way that we do things, we share our tacit insights, and then we talk about those. That's interesting, Fisher. Why do you do it that way? We then explore each other's perspectives, and we realize there's not the way or an only way. There are many ways. Yeah. And when we start sharing those many ways, we actually co-create new ways that are better than either way. And that's what, the conversations around tacit is so important. I'm saying that this is why we're exploring three questions. And when we get to the question session, I hope that some people will disagree. Say, oh, well, I disagree with that. We would do it this way. And then you can say, well, that's interesting. Why would you do it that way? We'll talk more about that a bit later. So the three questions I want to address in these next 30 minutes or so is, why do we know what we know? Is there one truth or many truths? Are there parallel things that can happen? How do we come to know things? And what does that mean about what we don't know? Because what we don't know is often where the future is. Nobody wanted a smartphone until somebody said, you know what, why don't we put phones and music and internet and browsing and touch screens? All of these ideas existed, right? There was no new technology. There was a new combination of existing ideas, and someone had a conversation around that, and they then applied what they had in that conversation to create something that literally changed the world. So, let's explore that. What do we know? What do we don't know? How do we know? And then that leads to another thing as well. Well, okay, how do we create that tacit knowledge? Because your tacit knowledge is different to mine. We can't just download your brain into my brain. And then I suddenly know the world as you know it, because there's context, there's situation, there's history, and there's future. So we come to use that tacit knowledge in different ways and in different situations. So I wanted to introduce the concept of mind flex as opposed to mindset. So a lot of people say mindset is important, and it is. There is a way of seeing things. I have a mindset that says this is the best way. But what if we had flexibility around that? What if we could flex our mind to say, well, yes, I know Fisher understands it that way, and I understand it this way, but I wonder how Min understands it. Let's ask her a question. She may have a different perspective that would change our mindset and open our mind to see a range of other possibilities. So we're going to talk about mind flex and why that's important. So dealing things not with a set mind, but with a flexible and open mind. And that enables us to change our world, which enables us to see things in the future which are different to the way we see them now. So changing the patterns. And the third question is, we want to understand how that mind flex enables us to become adaptable. Because a lot of people think, oh, no, I don't like change. It's different. I don't want to go there. I like the world the way it is. But you know what? The world is changing. And it doesn't matter what you do to keep it the same, it is going to change. So how do you open your mind and engage mind flex to become adaptable, which then opens your mind to new possibilities, to new tacit knowledge? So they're the three concepts that we'll cover. We'll go into each of those in a little bit more detail, and then we'll come to the end. And of course, that will offer more questions, way more questions than it will answer, right?
Yeah.
But that's what learning is about.
Yes. Thank you.
No questions or comments right now?
This logic is very, 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 very good. I mean, many people, I mean, maybe they may know a little bit about the tacit knowledge, but they really don't know how it works, how it was generated, how it was evolved. So I think this will give us a new picture about the tacit knowledge for our people, to help us better understanding how the mechanisms inside works. And then also, if we know that more, will also give us the better way of how to learn, how to better use of their tacit knowledges.
Absolutely.
Very good.
Let me demonstrate that. That's such an important point. I wanted to explore it just for a couple of moments. I'm going to ask you a couple of questions that I would like you to answer, and then we'll talk about why I asked you those questions and what it means.
Right.
So what is the capital of China?
Beijing.
Okay, so Beijing is the capital of China. What would be the wrong answer to that question?
Your question is about what would be the
wrong answer to the question? What is the capital of Beijing?
Maybe, well, it's,
sorry, what is the capital of China?
The capital, whether it's economical capital or political capitals.
Yeah. Okay. So see, you're immediately introducing some context, right?
Yeah.
But just answer. Give me two possible answers that are wrong to the question. What is the capital of China?
Yeah. Let's say Shanghai, Wuhan, and some other Xi'an and some other areas.
Correct. Now they're correct answers, right?
Yeah.
But what that shows us is that when I ask you a question about a capital in a particular country, you correctly answered, and then you correctly answered two wrong answers around that capital. But what you did, and this is where your tacit patterns automate what you think, you have some bias, and we all have bias. There's nothing wrong with bias. You have biases because your brain uses patterns to quickly identify possibilities that are correct. Okay. But when I asked you what is the wrong answer, you gave another Chinese city. Melbourne could have been the answer. You know, the color green could have been the answer. Yeah. You say, yeah, but they're not capitals. But I didn't ask you specifically about the capital. I said, what would be the wrong answer to that question? And you then think within the context of the question. And your mind, because it's efficient and it's good at making decisions, your mind gives an answer within that context. But see, the greatest inventions of the world don't maintain the context, they change the context. They use your tacit knowledge to change the context. And when we can open our mind to see a different context, then we can actually come up with all sorts of things and reapply and adapt our tacit knowledge to a new situation instead of maintaining the current situation. Yeah. And this is the power of tacit, but the power of your mind, it's very efficient. You know, you clearly are an excellent manager and a good leader. So you make decisions quickly based on quickly assessing the options within the context.
Yeah.
But what if you could assess, this is what we have, where could we go as a different way of seeing the world? That's how things like the smartphone get invented. Yeah. So people change the context around, so they change the question.
Yeah.
And that's what mentoring can do. It enables you to open the possibilities. So let's explore how some of that happens. And what we're trying to do here, and that kind of addresses that third question, but the fact that you brought it up and we could use an exercise within the conversation makes it more powerful, right?
Great. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah.
So let's keep going. Yeah. And of course, interrupt anytime. The best conversations go back and forward, exchange of points of view. And that's really important for your listeners to understand. You know, it's not about just listening. It's about listening and reflecting and challenging. And, you know, you'll see in this bottom, this picture in the bottom right of the screen, it's not just a cog moving from one brain to another. It's the cogs interacting with each other to, you know, to generate something new. And what's new in that second head, in the receiving head, then gets translated back, which becomes something new in the initial transmitting head. And that's the power of conversations. Yeah. So let's look at the first. How do we know what we know? Well, as we've talked about a little bit, knowing is a perception. How do you see yourself? Are you this kitten and you see a lion? Or do you see people say, oh, but that's not real? Well, it's not real right now, but can it become real? Don't limit yourself with boxes of current perception. Where am I going? What am I doing? You ask yourself three questions. What are the facts of the matter? Then you say, well, what are the implications of that? So what? So what does that mean? Am I destined to sit here in this room for the rest of my life? Or can I walk outside? Can I move to a different city? Can I do something different? What are the implications of what it is that I know? And one of the what questions is, what do I not know? Then the so what can become, so how do I feel that? Do I do a degree? Do I study? Do I find a mentor? Do I have more conversations with different people who have different opinion to myself? Or do I stay within my little comfort zone? And we'll come back to that in a short while. But when you understand the so what, you then start to create options, which are then, now what? How do I act on that? Too many people go around the what, so what. They're unhappy. They don't like their job. They don't like their boss. They don't like this. They don't like that. The so what then is, well, I'm going to be very unhappy, or I'm going to backstab the boss, or I'm going to change my job, or whatever. But they go around and around and around in this circle, and they don't get to the now what and put those insights into their life into action. How do I now act on what I know and the implications of that so that I can become what I want to be? How do I turn myself from the kitten into the lion? How do I move forward and be a more competent, happy professional and a happier person? And that's the now what question. So, you know, your perspective of your life is intangible. It's how you emotionally engage with that. Do you want to be a kitten? Do you want to stay a kitten? Do you want to be the lion? Do you want to move on to that? Have you put the actions in place? My mother always said, you know, one day I want to go to Ireland because it's where my ancestry came from. And she, on her 60th birthday, I bought her a ticket to fly to Ireland because she had never saved the money. She had never acted on that lifetime dream for 60 years. So I said, here it is. You weren't taking the action, so you go. And we went with her, and she then had that experience because finally the dream was turned into an action, but not through her own actions. And she still remembers that. She's still alive today. She's 84. And she still remembers that trip very fondly because finally the tacit knowledge was put into a plan which was created to take actions to make it happen. And that's what tacit knowledge can do, but only if it's acted upon. Tacit knowledge is in our head. And that tacit knowledge changes with time and experiences. People say, oh, I just want to capture your tacit knowledge. So they write a book. Well, I've written 4 books, and I can tell you what's in those books is a fraction of what I can share.
Agree.
The hard part is if you just,
Agree. Fully agree with you. Yeah.
When you take your tacit understanding of the world and you try to express it in an explicit form, like a book, like a proposal, like a question, then it's always going to be limited. What is far better is a question in a conversation from the person that you're talking to, because then you can give them what they want within that question. It might not be what they like or what they were expecting, but you can give them your perspective, what you might do in that situation, and explain why based on your experiences and tacit knowledge and history. Now, they might say, well, that might work very well for you, Arthur. However, and that's a good conversation. Keep that conversation going, because talking about the differences will actually get them to see other possibilities which they couldn't see before. And that's what you're trying to do. Open their minds and move them forward rather than reinforce, existing patterns and boundaries. Don't think that you can just transfer what you know and create like a mini me in your mentee. It never should be your plan when you're mentoring. Your role as a mentor is to enable that person to become the best form of them, the best future form of them that they can possibly create, and to highlight challenges and possibilities, and not the answer, but a range of options for them to make their own decisions on. You are building not just their knowledge, but building their confidence to deal with that knowledge and to know which situations to apply it and which to further develop it. Does that make sense, Fisher?
I fully agree with it. And actually, what you said just now also reminded me one of the facts that many of the mentors, they just try to share their personal experience, or they say, okay, someone mentee asked them question, they just answer. And actually, what you mentioned just now remind me of one thing. They may just share the very fragmental information to the mentees, not very systematically. Maybe even the mentor themselves don't know what kind of tacit knowledge they really have it completely in their brains.
Absolutely right. And this is where parents often make poor decisions. In their mind, I want my child to be like me and as good as me. That's a very limited point of view. I mean, my own parenting, I have two daughters who are now in their 30s. My own has always been, I want to give you the opportunities to be better than me. Why would I limit what you can do and who you become? I want you to decide that. It's your passion, not mine. It's your life, not mine. Mm-hmm. How do we get you the things that you need, the things that I have learned that will help you accelerate your path, not you need to follow my path. And the relationship between a mentor and a mentee is the same. It's not about the mentor, it's about the mentee. The mentor will learn a lot if they address their mentoring in that way, if they share their tacit knowledge, not as the truth, but ways of doing things that may help their mentee to see other possibilities that they couldn't have seen. So shared experience is good, but a told truth or only way is not a good thing.
Agree with you fully.
So I mentioned this last point before about the idea of education, learning, and mentoring really should be about opening minds to question the possibilities, to explore, to get that mind into a divergent, an opening and expanding point of view, not a convergent. We as managers are very good at solving problems, which requires you to focus on what you know and to bring it in to a point that's convergent, to focus in, to bring a decision, to bring an action. And that's important, right? You do need that. But when you're mentoring, you don't want people to focus in on what they have. You want people to look out at where they can go and what that they can create. So changing that frame of mind from a mindset, a convergent mindset, into a divergent mind flex is important.
Yeah.
So just exploring, taking that to the next level now, as you correctly observed, there's a flow here. You know, we're going to say, well, what's tacit knowledge about? You know, how can it be shared? What's the point of sharing it, which we talked about? But now we say, well, okay, where did it come from? If a mentor is sharing tacit knowledge, how did they get it? Did they eat tacit knowledge for breakfast, or did they read a book? Did they have an experience? So, you know, the tacit knowledge forms from your observation, your conversations, and your experiences. No doubt it will be influenced by what you have been told, what your education has been, because you will already have patterns of experience in your brain, and your brain will be, you know, sort of crystallizing those into, well, do it this way because it's quicker and faster and maybe cheaper or whatever. But actually, it may not be the best. People get trained through their lives to be efficient, to be the best, to be the fastest, and they are rewarded for those competitive behaviors. But actually, mentoring is not a competitive behavior. It's a very different thing. It's a collaborative behavior. It's one of sharing and guiding, not one of telling. Yeah. Coaching is a bit different, because coaching can focus in on a skill and say, you know, if you're a great sports star, you're just holding your grip a little bit different, and it's about fine tuning, you know, a particular way of doing something. You're already perhaps the best in the world at this, but you know, there's little tweaks that you can get from the coach that will make you even better. So coaching tends to be more focused on skills. Mentoring tends to be, good mentoring, in my opinion, tends to be more focusing on future possibilities and seeing other ways. So one is convergent, the other is divergent. Both very important, of course. I'm not saying mentoring is better than coaching, or coaching is better than mentoring. You need both. You need to have, you need your convergent skills for management and your divergent skills for leadership. Just employ the divergent skills to say, where are we going, before you solve the problem. Because if you use your management skills and jump on the problem before you think about it, it may not even be the priority. It may be something that you could do next week, or something you don't need to do. Something, you know, let's go over here, because that will make that irrelevant. So the balance and the order of opening the mind, the divergence before the convergence is important. And that takes a lot of mentoring for people to get it, because most of their life they've been taught to focus in rather than look outward. So we learn through these observations. The conversations are important. Getting a mentor, getting someone who can guide you to say, well, is that really the right way? And you know what? That's even the wrong question. There's not one right way. What other ways could you possibly do that? If you weren't here and now, maybe what might you do in a different situation? And why can't you change that situation? Yeah. So it's all about the questions and leading them towards at least the looking at different paths. Now, it may well be they come back to that first answer as the best option, but at least they're looking at different options, other possibilities.
Right.
And we can get very patterned very quickly, as that little exercise showed. You know, because I asked you about a capital city, the only wrong answers offered were other capital cities. They could have been anything. And that's not saying, you know, Fisher made a mistake. You didn't. You answered the way that we're trained to answer, rather than sort of step back. And I led you into that, of course. So in a way, that was bad mentoring, right? But it was done in order to demonstrate how easy it is to fall into pattern. The last point I wanted to make about this, and we've talked a little bit about this before, because of your excellent question, Fisher, is about, you know, getting the benefits of shifting from a mindset, you know, a set way of seeing things through your mind, you know, a frame, you know, this is the way the world is, to, well, how could the world be? Moving from what is as a statement to what is possible as a question. Just by changing a statement to a question, adding one word, completely change that you perceive the possible situations that you could run with. So that's those concepts. I could talk about any one of those for a long time, but I promised within the time that we had, we'd answer 3 questions. But you have a question?
Yes, Dr. Shelley. So for this, actually, I understand what you mentioned about the mindset, is a set of mind and so on. And then how about this mind flex? So this is a brand new term, not terms where I ever heard of that. So can you just explain a little bit more about what is a mind flex?
Yeah, no, great question. Thank you. It's a word I made up, right? But I made it up because there was no word for it. And it's such an important point to make. What your mind will do automatically is will find a pattern that fits, and then it will apply that pattern because it's efficient. But what I want your mind to do is, rather than quickly and convergently find something that fits an answer, to look out and to say, okay, what might the possibilities be? To be standard patterns, to be flexible, to flex your mind, to open it, to see what other possibilities might exist. And one way of doing that is to find a trusted friend and say, well, I'm in this situation, what would you do? Just ask, you know, or to challenge yourself through reflection. Well, okay, I know what I would normally do, but is there a better way? Could we do this differently? Could we do something so that it's being flexible of mind before you decide? So it gives you that little bit of reflection. Speaking of reflection, Donald Shon wrote a book called The Reflective Practitioner back in 1999, and he talked about reflecting in the moment and reflecting back. You know, reflecting back is when something happened and you think about it afterwards, but it's already done, right? You can't change it, but you can learn from it. So that's where things like lessons learned and post-action reviews and those things come from. But other times you need to reflect in the moment. Oh, we're going to run out of time. Maybe I should speed up. So as it's happening, you need to be parallel processing that thought to guide what you're going to do right now. They're great things, you know, reflecting in the moment and reflecting back. But in my PhD thesis, I talked about reflecting forward. Where will this be? What will it look like? What do we do in the moment now? Not to reinforce the existing pattern, but what do we do now that's different, maybe outside our comfort zone, in order to create something new as we move forward? And this is where good strategy generation can be done. So things like simulations, but simulations are based on the patterns of the past. What if we change this pattern? What would that look like? It's kind of where AI and machine learning is now. They're trying to write algorithms, but those algorithms will set patterns. How does the machine keep adjusting and evolving the algorithm as it gets new data? How does it evolve? You know, and that's what happens in natural ecosystems. You know, as the environment changes, the animals and plants in that environment adapt. They express their genes in different ways as the environmental pressure comes on them. When we get very good at this, we can actually put pressure on the environment to change the environment. And that's how you can successfully transform culture, by taking mind flex and moving the culture in the direction that you want to move it in, not because you're forcing it, but because you are leading it in a way that brings the people with you because they want that to happen. You can't force people to do anything, but you can be a good role model. And mentoring is a big part of that. I noticed that we're getting towards our 40 minutes, so I might quickly answer question 3 and wrap up.
Thank you.
Like, we could talk forever about this stuff, right? So let's quickly talk about this. We don't have time to talk about this right now, but it's largely about what we were talking about. So, you know, entity 1, this might be Fisher and Arthur, it might be your organization or another one. Think about the way in which they perceive the world. You know, what do they expect? What do they desire? What will they tolerate and what will they reject? Now, the areas of opportunity are where you disagree. Now, that may seem strange because if I disagree with you, then we're going to conflict on it, right? But if we are in mind flex, we can say, well, you disagree with me. Why do you see it that way? Explore those differences in a way that, you know, enable you to understand why the differences is there, because that is where the insights, the learning, the creativity will come from. I could talk about that another time. There is a video on this on the internet, and the resources, the links to those resources are at the end of the presentation. Also think about where you are. Are you down in the bottom left-hand corner in a known world where you're very comfortable, or are you up in the unknown world? Are you actually trying to create new specks of light in that outer universe? Because that's where leadership is. Where are we going? What can we create? It's a very different way of seeing things. And through that journey, you want to be, it's not where you want to be a right or a wrong place. Sometimes you need to be down in the known space, and others you need to jump up to the unknown space. That's where the adaptability is really important. Again, there's a video on this that you can pick up off the internet. This is what mind flex looks like. I have created a video on this that explains it in detail, but if you see there's a journey, so you're starting in the bottom left with inputs. What have we got to put into this? Early on, you can see it's about anticipation and inspiration. It's what can we do with this? But as we go around, we change the balance of our frame of mind. But the whole time as we go through this creative cycle, we are keeping all of that thinking in place. It's not a process where we're thinking divergently now, and then we switch to the next stage where it's only convergent. You know, design thinking is a bit like that. Design thinking is good, but it's limited because it tends to cut out the different styles of thinking. How do you keep the multiple styles of thinking and behaving and interacting as you go? So more about that another time. How are we for time? We're right on the 40 minutes, I think, right?
We can just have more. It's okay. No hurry.
Yeah. All right. Another 3 or 4 minutes would be great, just to at least create an awareness of these concepts. I have a 4-stage thing. There's awareness when you first learn about something. Then there's the attitude around that, which is, you know, when you learn something new, your tendency is to reject it. How do you change that attitude to accept it and engage with it? Once you then engage with something, you then realize that you don't have the ability. So 4 A's: awareness, attitude, ability. I may have to learn something. I may have to bring some other team members in that know. And then you can get to the 4th A, which is action. You know, and if you can go through that 4A stage, it can get you to a much better place, but it usually requires you to get outside your comfort zone. You need to open your mind to new things. So most people live in a box. I'm very comfortable with these things. You know, I wouldn't go over there. Dangerous, it's risky, it's unfamiliar. I might look stupid, whatever it is, you create all sorts of excuses and reasons to not step outside your comfort zone. And this is where mentoring is really powerful. It enables them to ask those questions in a safe environment, to explore some of that other magic, you know, to get out, to expand the comfort zone and to expand other areas of tacit knowledge. Again, we could talk about that forever. This is really important to cover, I think. Forget about the stuff on the left. I talked about conversations on several occasions. There's a kind of you'll see this is like a DNA, a gene to build conversation into your genes. There's a cycle that you go through. One is to acknowledge differences. Fisher, I know that you will see it differently to me. That's okay. You know, so let's respect each other's opinions on this so that we can converse to explore. Let's see what you think, what I think. And, you know, we may still disagree at the end, but that's okay because we respect each other. Then as we converse, we start to ask questions. Step 4, about inquiry. That's really interesting. Why do you see it that way, Fisher? I understand my way of thinking, but I want to understand yours as well. And when you increase that level of understanding, the tacit knowledge of how other people perceive things, then you can adapt. You can build your capabilities. You can explore your comfort zone. You can open your mind. And that adaptability enables you to do things that you couldn't do before. So you become more capable than what you were before. And when you become more capable and you engage in these conversation spirals, you then engage in collaboration with each other. You build partnerships, you build relationships, you build confidence, not only in yourself, but in each other and in the relationship. And that enables you to co-create social value. You may benefit yourself. You may only be interested in increasing your profit, or you may be interested in creating value that is for wider society, to change the world. Put it out there to get other people to use this, to use it productively. And that's why I'm having this conversation with you, because our values are aligned on this.
Yeah.
So, thank you. I think just one last wrap-up slide, and you may want to edit a little bit of this out. This idea of sharing and engaging. I've often said to people, you can't listen with your mouth open. Ask people, give somebody else a chance to enter the conversation. And you can't learn with your mind closed. If you have a mindset, it doesn't matter what I tell you. No. My mindset is you're wrong, Arthur. This is the way the world is. Go, well, you're never ever going to learn in that case. And of course, you can't lead with a compassionate heart. If you don't have an emotional connection, if you don't have empathy for others, you won't listen to them. And you won't be able to influence them either. Wrapping up to finish. This is a pretty complex slide, and people can take their time to look at it. This actually I drew after a conversation with an international group, and I was listening to them, and the whole time I was writing down what they were saying. And so you can see, I said, from this conversation, these are words that you used. These are how I saw them coming together. So, we go through the conversation to collaborate and share. We're sharing perspectives, we're developing trust, we're building relationships, we're each making a contribution because we're listening to each other, because we respect, we're using enabling tools. This was a virtual conversation during COVID. So then I went back with this picture and I said, this is what I saw happen. Then we had another conversation around what this meant from different people's perspectives. So we learned a lot. Be a positive role model, be inclusive, be optimistic, show the respect, and EQ, the empathy for other people, facilitate, not tell, explore. I refer to myself as a learning facilitator, not a teacher. A teacher tells the students the way the world is. A learning facilitator says, how could the world be? What do you think? Johnny, what do you think? Yang, what do you think? Oh, you've got different perspectives because you come from different cultures. That's good. Let's explore those. So doing all of the things. And I refer to leadership as having willing, intelligent followers. A true leader, an authentic leader, it's not a position. It's not a mindset. It's a mind flex. It's people want to be with you, willing. I'm here because I want to be part of what you're doing, Fisher. I think you are leading a wonderful initiative with great values. Intelligent, I've thought about this. Is he just trying to take advantage of me? I don't think so. Why is he doing this? Is this worthwhile? Can it work? Willing, intelligent followers. And that's what you're creating as part of mentoring.co. And that's what you're creating as GO-TKM. They're great initiatives that are doing a lot of the things that I'm sharing here. And I would love to see other people to do those. Here are the resources. All of these resources are free. You can download them. You can watch them. On the Instant Insights, there are 26 videos giving you more information, telling you, and they're 4-minute videos. You can just watch, listen, and have a conversation with people about them. Share them with your team at work and say, let's watch this 4-minute video and talk about it. So that's it. Thank you. I'm sorry we're going a little bit too long, but I hope this stimulates a lot of questions. Yes,
thank you, Arthur. Thank you for your wonderful sharing. And now it's Q&A time. If you have any questions, you can ask them through your microphone or put them in the chat box. 现在是问答环节，大家有疑问的话可以提出来，可以就是其他平台的朋友可以把问题就传递给我们的工作人员。那在 Zoom 里面的朋友呢，可以直接提问或者把问题输入在那个聊天框里。
Yeah. Hello.
Arthur.
Oh, you want, yes, hello. You wanted me to speak there?
Hi, Dr. Shelley. Yes, I have a question.
Yep.
Yes. Yeah. My question, your curiosity, which drives you to explore the world, is very impressive to me. And you said you won't limit your child as well, which reminds me of a story of mine. I once bit and broke a thermometer. It's poisonous, right? So my question is, when we explore the world, how to protect ourselves? Meanwhile, we won't limit our curiosity. Yes, my question in Chinese is, Shelley 博士他的好奇心驱使他去探索世界，这让我印象非常的深刻。他在教育子孙的时候不会限他们的思维，所以这让我想起了我小时候的一个故事。我因为好奇心养坏过温度计，但是大家都知道温度计它是有毒的，所以呢，我的问题是，我们在不打击好奇心的同时，要如何在不断探索世界的过程中保护好我们自己 ？Yeah, that's my question. Your turn. Yeah, Dr. Shelley. Yeah.
Yes, yeah. I mean, it's a great question. It goes back to that drawing of the comfort zone. We're afraid to explore the areas that we are unfamiliar with. That fear is a natural thing for humans to do, because if they don't know, then they place themselves at risk. And of course, you don't want to place yourself at risk. To be successful, you need a calculated risk. Sometimes you have to explore a little to take a few small steps that are not so risky. You can in a safe way. And this is where mentoring can be really powerful, because you can ask a mentor, what do you think of this? Should I try this? Have you seen this happen before? But if you don't have the luxury of a mentor, then it can be difficult. IC, do you want to translate some of this? I'm talking too long.
就是我们每个人都有自己的舒适区，因为害怕去冒险，因为冒险有时候意味着风险、很危险，这是很自然的现象。那我们可以就是从小事做起，我们可以迈出一小步，那这一小步呢，可以让我们安全的落地。如果你有一位导师，这是一个就很好的办法，可以帮到你的，因为你可以向你的导师提问，导师，你觉得对这种事情你怎么看？那我是否应该去尝试呢？但如果你没有导师的话，可能就会更困难一点。
Thank you. The really short answer is take calculated risks to fail often, but fail safely. NASA, the aeronautics organization, has a motto that is lean forward and fail safely. See?
我们可以就是对风险其实进行一个计量。那我们比如说在美国国家宇航局 NASA 组织，他们就有对知识管理就有一个经营的管理的方法，那他们就会对这个风险进行一个评估。
See that Min has said thank you to that. We could talk about this longer, but we can also go to another question. I see.
那这个问题呢，我们其实还可以探讨更多。那时间原因的话，我们就暂时讲到这里。就是大家在遇到风险的时候，我们可以就是从好的步伐做起，能够确保自己能够安稳、平稳的落地，再去探索更多。如果有办法，我们可以去找一名导师来帮助自己。其他朋友还有问题吗？我们进入第二个问题。大家有问题的话，可以输入在聊天框里，或者说直接开麦提问。Doctor, please wait for a moment. We have some questions from the audience on other platforms, and we are collecting them, and my colleague will put them in the chat box.
Just while you're preparing those questions, I'll just say to Min on the first question, don't be afraid to take risks, but be very considered in the risks that you take. You know, what is at stake? What is the potential value? And balance those, and then you will develop faster.
Good, thank you.
我们阿瑟博士呢，对刚才第一个问题呢，也给予了寄语，就是我们要不害怕风险。那你做一个就是之前做谨慎的思考，你要去衡量，就是这个你可能会就是冒，但是你同时又能获得什么样的价值，在这两者之间，你做一个很好的权衡，然后再想你下一步该怎么做。Is a sharing in the chat box. It's about mentor and mentee. Is the mentor helps the mentee opens the mind by asking challenging questions. That's a way of changing from mindset to mindflex, and where tacit knowledge is created. Good point. This is a answer from the audience.
Teaching is like from a teacher to a student who tells them this is how the world is. A mentor does not do that. A mentor will share experiences and ask their mentee, how do you think the world can be? So it shifts it from a statement to a question, and that opens the mind.
第二个呢，这位朋友他分享了就是他对刚才Arthur博士的分享进行了一个评论。他说，我们就导师通过就向学员提出挑战性的问题，然后帮助学员去打开他的思维。那这种方式正好是可以帮助这个学员把他的这个思维从一个固定的思维转变成灵活的思维。那用Arthur博士的话说，就是 mindset to mind flex。那也是在这个过程当中，那学员的隐性知识得以创造出来。博士的分享也就是导师跟学员之间的关系与我们传统的老师跟学生之间的关系是有区别的。因为在传统的教学当中，我们老师就是仅仅单向的把知识传输给学生，而作为导师是不同的地方在于，导师他会向学员去分享自己的经验，他会向学员去提出一些挑战性的问题，比如说你对这个事情，你对这个世界如何看？就通过把我们就是从教学里的这个陈述性的这种传输，转向我们提问性的这种疑问句，通过提问，然后让学生的思维得以拓开，在这个过程中也是让他的这个隐性知识得以浮现。好的，那我们现在看还有没有其他的问题。Yeah, the third question, that I become what I expect to be. It may not be true in reality, but we can try to be. How can we get benefited rather than be frustrated when we adapt to changes?
Yes, this is another very good question. Of course, you cannot control everything in your life. And the most important things are the most difficult to get. Over to you, IC, and then I'll add more.
我们第三个问题呢是说，就我们常说，就是我们能成为我们期待成为的样子，但现实情况中可能并不是这样，因为我们可能会遇到很多的阻碍，特别是在面对很多变化的时候，我们可能感觉到会有受挫或者各种困难。那如果我们是如何能够在面对变化去这个适应的过程中，我们如何能够让我们从中受益，而不是说仅仅的可能说受到了挫败。这样，那 Arthur 的先生的分享确实是我们在生活中我们是没有办法去完全掌控所有的事的，因为其实最重要的东西它往往是最难得到的。
I think the best way to achieve what's being asked by Sunshine is to look for the small gains over time. If you look at your big goal that you want to achieve in 1 year or 5 years, you don't get any short-term motivation. Break it down into small steps and say, this week I will take this step forward. Next week I will take that step forward. And you go and give yourself the benefit and credit of taking the next step towards your goal. Then you can feel motivated from each step being a little closer.
那这样呢，我们可以最好的方式呢，是可以把我们的一个，比如说我们有1年的或者5年的目标，这样长期的目标，我们可以把它进行分解。我们随着时间的推移，我们能看到自己取得一点一滴的进步。那我们可以，比如说这周我们跟自己规划，这周做哪一步，然后下周我们再这一步。那在这个慢慢的成长过程当中，我们能看到自己的进步。那这点进步对我们来说也其实是很好的激励，能够让我们有动力继续朝着下一步走。我们因为一下子大目标可能对我们来说是有压力的，但是我们可以从小目标做起，这样一步一步的去往前走。
And this is where MindFlex is very important. You go through the cycle, each step, and then reflect on the outcomes. That reflection is where we learn. When we do something, then step back and say, how could we have done that better? How could it have been different? Before we take the next step, we have become more capable in the second step because we took the first step, and more confident. So it allows us to proceed faster and faster with time and take bigger steps each time.
那我们就像刚才我们提到的 Mindflex 这样，是有一个循环，就是当我们比如说做完第一步的时候，我们可以反思我们在这一步的成果。那在这个反思的过程当中，也是我们学习的过程。我们通过第一步的这个实践，去我们看下一步我们如何能够做得更好。因为在完成第一步的时候，其实我们这个时候已经具备了一定的能力，而且在自信心也得到了提高。那这样可以更好的进入下一步，然后也许能让我们更快，然后出更大的步伐，然后往前走。
I'm not sure whether Sunshine wants more information about this question. Of course, we could talk longer, but I think that's the main feature. Give yourself credit for short-term gain.
刚才的问题呢，我们呢也可以谈更多。那主要的点就是说，我们要给予自己对于自己获得的一点点的进步，给予自己赞赏，给予自己奖励，给自己更大的信心，然后朝着更大的目标前进。There is a sharing from Joseph in the chat box. Yeah. Thanks to Dr. Shelley for a thought-provoking talk about tacit knowledge management. I like the point and explanation about how mentors can help mentee out of their comfort zone into where the possibilities lie. Thanks. Joshua, 他这位朋友的分享是非常谢谢谢利博士，他的关于这个隐性知识管理的这个分享是非常的引人深思的。我个人非常喜欢他提到的一点是关于导师是可以帮助学员走出他们的舒适区，正是在这个走出舒适区的过程当中，意味着更多的可能性。非常感谢。大家还有其他的问题吗？ Ask a question.
Fortunately, I see Joshua had to leave, but the idea of being held back by your subconscious comfort zone is important. It's something you need to be conscious of so that you understand what is a real risk and what is a calculated risk that can be taken.
关于舒适区这一点，我们自己也要能有一个清醒的认知，我们能意识到我们哪些风险它对于我们而言是真正的风险，但有些呢其实是我们可以评估可以控制的。那在这个基础上，然后呢我们走出自己的舒适区。
Has asked another question.
Yes. Session DNN is broken. What can we do to restart dialogue between people and make us more creative?
Meaning the momentum of the conversations is very important. That's all. Conversation spirals, not conversation cycles. So you can do that piece, and then I'll add some more.
第四个问题呢是说，如果我们的这个在对话过程中，我们的对话 DNA 突然中断了，那我们如何能够重启这个对话，就是变得更有创造力？博士的分享就是让我们一直维持着这个对话的这个，其实是非常难的，但是也是非常重要的。所以我刚才提到了一个概念，就是说这个对话它更多的不是一个循环，它是一个螺旋状的一个模式。
A cycle is like a circle. It just goes around and comes back to the same point. But a spiral, when you go around the spiral, when you come back, you're at a higher level. You start here and you go around and up at the same time. You're building confidence, you're building knowledge, you're building capability. So when you finish that first rotation, you're now higher, so you are capable of more.
那这个对话如果是它是一个循环，就意味着我们可能在这个循环这个圈子里一直绕啊绕的，我们一直是围绕着一个点在那绕。但如果是这种螺旋式的上升过程，就意味着我们的这个对话可能从比如说一个螺旋，我们就进阶到了更高的一个阶段。在更高一个阶段的时候，你的这个对话就是你们的这个自信心会更强，你们拥有了更多的知识和更多的能力。特别是在你完成比如说第一个螺旋的时候，你这个时候你的能力已经比之前就是更高了。
The importance of that is that you can now create new options that you wouldn't have thought of before. So for example, I say, I see now we've had this conversation, understand what you mean. So therefore, I now know this is a better way than that. So it gives you that greater level of knowledge to make better decisions. And then, of course, that conversation happens and you leads to another and another. So if you can keep connecting the cycles, you end up with this spiral that takes you to a much higher level of capability.
那就像在这个螺旋里，螺旋的上升的时候，意味着我们可能得到了更多的选项，我们有了想到了可能新的方式、新的一些行动，是我们之前没有想到的。那在这个就是对话里，比如说我现在就是你跟对方对话，我理解了你的意思，那我们就是想一想有没有更好的方式，就在这个对话过程当中，我们有更多的启发，让自己具备就是更多的知识，那也能够做出更好的决策。也就是在这样螺旋式上升的过程中，这样就一步一步的累积，让我们变得更有能力，我们的隐性知识得以一步一步的就是被挖掘出来。
And when the conversations are broken, it can be hard to repair. Depends why the conversations have stopped. Have we had a fight? Have I broken your trust? Have we just moved apart and we don't connect anymore? Like we've moved jobs, so we're not working together. It is very important to step outside your comfort zone and reconnect. So you say, I see we haven't spoken in a while. I hope I haven't offended you. It would be great to catch up and chat over coffee. When can we meet? Reconnection takes effort.
那一段我们两个人之间的对话中断了，其实在修复其实是比较难的，因为你想一想，就你们的这个对话是为什么突然中断了？是因为你们争吵，还是说你们之间的这个信任关系破坏了？还是说因为可能你们两个人可能因为分开的，就是两个人不在一起共事了，导致你们的这个联系中断了？那这个时候就意味着我们需要走出我们的舒适区，是跟对方重新建立这个联系。比如你可以跟对方说 I see 我们好长时间没有联系了，希望我就是没有冒犯到你，就什么时候我们比如说出来我们喝一杯茶或者喝一杯咖啡，再重新叙一叙聚一聚。那这个是你需要走出舒适区去付出努力的。
If you want to maintain the conversations and a relationship, always end with what happens next. Oh, I would see you again next week. Or let's meet again at the Tacit Knowledge meeting. You know, make the connection into the future as to when you are going to have another conversation. Don't leave it vacant.
那如果你要跟对方维持这个对话，维持你们之间的关系，在一次对话的结束的时候，你一定要就是结束的时候，你提要谈谈的状况，就是说下周再见一次面怎么样？那就是我们下一次就是在这个隐性知识管理大会上，我们再见一次，就你要对未来就是有一个你们未来就什么时候再见面有一个明确的约定，那这样就可以保持你们这个对话的之间的联系可能突然断掉了。
Good way of describing this. And I will not get the question correct perhaps, but Wang Xi, you know, connection and relationship. That's in the conversations. Wang Xi, connection and relationship.
中国文化里就是我们的关系，因为我们要保持这样的联系跟关系。
I think that's all for that particular question.
Yes, I think yes, that's all for today's questions. Thank you, Dr. Astor, for your sharing and great answers. Sharing about the new ideas, the Mindflex and adaptable, and also the mental and MNT. They are really very inspiring. Thank you.
My great pleasure, Xie. I'm always happy to answer questions. People can find me on the internet. So let's hope our conversations don't get broken.
Yes. I will tell our audience if they have any questions, they can connect you by LinkedIn or send the questions to your email.
Yes.
如果大家还有问题的话，可以比如说可以直接在网上可能通过 LinkedIn 或者邮箱，然后发给阿斯博士，也可以反馈给我们的工作人员，然后我们到时候会反馈给这个阿斯博士。Okay. Thanks for your time to attend our webinar, and we hope to get your feedback on how to improve our services. 那非常感谢今天大家参加我们的论坛，我们也非常期待得到大家的反馈。在 屏幕的右下方是那个有一个二维码，然后大家可以扫码留下大家对本次讲座的意见。好，我们做一下我们下期的讲座预告，是在3月1号的晚间5点到6点，也是来自澳大利亚的，是 Richard Vines 先生，他是组织知识管理专家，也是墨尔本大学的知识管理特约研究员，也是澳大利亚维多利亚州政府的前知识管理专家。他要给我们分享的主题是从动态发展的视角看隐性知识管理。大家如果感兴趣的话，可以扫右方的二维码，然后报名参与下次的讲座。讲座的最后，我们跟大家分享一下，是在今年的9月3号到5号，我们即将在瑞士达沃斯举办第2届组织隐性技能管理论坛。感兴趣的朋友可以点击下方的我们的官方网址，就是 3w.GO-TKM.org， 然后去了解更多的信息。因为在我们的官网上呢，有我们组织隐性技能管理全球智库的信息，也有我们每场讲座的相关信息。今天的讲座就到此结束，非常感谢大家的参与。Doctor, that's all for today's webinar, and thank you again for your sharing.
Thank you. I appreciate your time, and just remind everyone there's a lot of free resources in the deck, so they can have a look and watch the videos and continue to develop themselves and their mentees.
那最后呢，也是一句寄语，就是我们身边有非常多的学习的资源，就我们互联网上可能有各种视频、文章资料，大家呢随时去拿来学习。Thank you, Doctor, and good night.
Good night.
拜拜。
再见。
再见。